In Joshua chapter 24, Joshua was addressing the people of Israel for one last time before his death, after he had led them into the promised land. And as he addresses them here on this occasion in Joshua chapter 24, he reminds them of the blessings that God had given them, and how God had been with them and provided them with this land that they were taking. And he gives a challenge to them and admonishes them in Joshua 24 and verse 14. He says, "Now therefore fear the Lord, and serve him in sincerity and truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord." Fear God, serve him in sincerity and in truth, and not serve him along with the other gods that the nations around you served, or that the peoples that you have been with, the gods that they served. Serve God only. Serve God exclusively, and serve him not just in whatever way seems right, but serve him in sincerity and truth. But then he says something interesting to them. After admonishing them to serve the Lord, fear him, serve him in sincerity and truth, he gives them a choice. He says, if it is disagreeable in your sight, in verse 15, if it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, choose for yourselves today whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served, which were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. He told them that if you don't want to serve the Lord, if you decide that you'd rather serve these other gods that were served by the people beyond the river, or that your fathers served, if you want to serve them rather than serving God, you make the choice. Choose today who it is that you are going to serve. And so he doesn't try to bully them or pressure them or manipulate them into serving God even though they don't really want to. He says, you make the decision. You serve God, or if you decide you want to serve some other gods, then you serve those other gods. But then he says this statement here at the end of Joshua 24 verse 15, statement that a lot of us will remember and will recognize, where he says, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." This was what he was hoping the people would also decide, that they would serve the Lord. Of course, first they said they would right after this, and Joshua kind of challenged them even further and said, well, you won't be able to serve the Lord, but they insisted that he would. This was what he wanted them to do. He wanted them to make this choice, but Joshua stated that his decision was that, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. This is the decision that all of us have to make. Are we going to serve the Lord? As Joshua said, he and his household were going to serve them. We're going to serve the Lord. But what's important here, as you look at Joshua 24 and verse 15, what's important is when it is that Joshua makes this statement. When does he say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord? Notice when he says it is before he gets an answer from the rest of the people as to what they were going to do. We just read where he challenged them to make the choice whether they're going to serve God or not. He told them what they needed to do to fear God and serve him in sincerity and truth. So he wanted them to make the decision to serve the Lord. But before they ever answered, Joshua said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. What that means is that his mind was already made up. He had already made his decision. It didn't matter what they decided. It didn't matter if they were going to be faithful or not. His decision was already made. We need to take a lesson from Joshua here, that where we should be trying to encourage people to be faithful, we should be trying to encourage people to make the decision to fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth. We want to encourage people to do that. But in the end, whether people around us make that decision to do that or not, that shouldn't affect what we do. Our decision should already be made. No matter what anyone else decides, we are going to serve the Lord. And so I want to encourage each one of us to remember Joshua. Remember that challenge that he offered to the people to fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity and in truth, and to make the decision today. Choose for yourselves today whom you will serve. And then, no matter what anyone else does, make sure that your decision is to do what's right, is to do what is good, to be faithful to God. Let's all make that decision and strive to serve God as He would want us to today. Thanks.